Hello and welcome to Game Changers with Vicki Abelson. That would be me, and my guest today is the divine Ken Levine. Will I ever get sick of saying that? Hi, Ken.
How you doing, Vicki? Good to talk to you.
It's good to talk to you too. I'm so glad that you're here, and I'm going to do a little housekeeping. We were just talking about Facebook and how they no longer, they even make the Zoom link go private, and I have to
Wait,
go.
you have a
now.
problem with Facebook? Really?
Okay,
really? Somebody has an issue with Facebook?
So have you not? I mean, your show doesn't go live on Facebook.
No, mine is just a regular audio podcast. Hollywood and Levine. I shamelessly slide that in there.
We're going to
but it's available on iTunes and Spotify and iHeart and all the different places. So no, it doesn't go on Facebook.
It doesn't go on Facebook. So you haven't run into any issues like I keep running into.
No. My issues are that I go on my news feed and all my friends' parents are dying. And that's what I get on my news feed.
Excuse my eyes going back and forth, but I'm just posting this again because Facebook won't send notifications. So Ken, we were just talking before we came live about COVID. I told you that I lead sort of the COVID crazies. And what has your life been like for the last 2 years? How have you adjusted to COVID?
Well, I spent like the first 60 weeks pretty much in lockdown.
Right.
And look, I'm a writer. I usually work from home.
Right.
So I spent a lot of time just writing, just trying to keep myself busy. But, since the, got the vaccines and things like that, I sort of venture out. I'll eat outdoors or in a restaurant that I know is not really crowded. And I see that they actually do check for your vaccinations, but I don't go to football stadiums or Dodger Stadium or the Rose Parade or anything like that. To me, that's really just asking for it. So I try to be as careful as I can, with the understanding that anyone can get it. So you just have to.
Do you have a pandemic bubble? Like, have there been people that friends, family that you've seen throughout the pandemic?
Me, my wife, and Nicole Kidman. It's just been the three of us. And it's worked out great because Nicole has never come around. So
I actually watched an old Nicole Kidman movie last night that I had never seen before. That's on Netflix, and I can't remember.
That's when her face was moving and stuff.
It was when her face was moving, isn't it?
Yeah, that's kind of had a bubble with my daughter and son-in-law, and also with my son and daughter-in-law and granddaughter up north. But we really haven't done that much. No Carnival cruises for us in the last 2 years. Of course, I don't know why anyone takes a Carnival cruise, but still.
I have a friend on a cruise right now.
That's just insane.
What?
It's just insane.
I don't.
A super spreader that you can't get off of.
I know.
That's a great idea.
So were you guys like having the groceries delivered and doing all of that stuff?
Oh yeah, for a long time, yes. You order all these groceries and you say, okay, I want grape nuts. And they go, well, okay, we couldn't find grape nuts, but we got something just like it, Count Chocula.
Yes.
We're getting these things like, wait, what is this? Did we order squash? What is this? Well, that's kind of like an apple.
Well, or else I was getting like the apples that were all like beat up and bruised and cans that were banged in. And yeah, there was a bunch of that going on.
Right. You order like, 4 chickens and you get 1. Yeah. No, we went through all of that. Our big splurge was like every few months, we ordered from Zabar's in New York.
Oh,
So we had like great deli food for like
Mm.
4 days.
nice.
Yeah.
I
That
just
was our
did
big treat.
I just did bagels and lox from New York for New Year's. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
So okay, so now the way it is now, Omicron, crazy. All right, we were just discussing LA just rounded the height. We're just starting to come down. So are you more careful? Did you get more careful again with Omicron?
Yeah, I did.
Mhm.
Yeah, I did. I tend to eat out more at restaurants. I don't really go out all that much. Have not been to Trader Joe's, in the last few weeks. They're calling saying, "Where are you?"
So okay, so are you back to ordering your groceries? What are you doing?
We've done a couple of Instacarts. Yeah,
Yeah.
we've done a couple of Instacarts.
See, now that I've gone back to doing my own grocery shopping, I can't bear the thought of them picking out my groceries again and getting all that. So yeah, I've run through Ralph's a couple times.
Yeah, I'm not licking the floor at Gelson's anymore. I stopped doing that.
Oh, that's a good thing. But you
Yeah.
are still doing outdoor restaurants?
Yes, occasionally.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I did 3 last week. I just did one on Monday and I decided I think I'm done with that for a while too, because people felt a little too
Del
close. and it-
Taco didn't have good separation between the tables for you.
If one person coughs, I went to Nobu Malibu last Tuesday and a woman at a table away from started
In
coughing.
Ventura, coughed.
And that's it. A woman coughed 2 tables. I'm like, no, I don't think I can do this anymore. So it's back to delivery. What is that called? Uber Eats and all of that stuff. I think. I'm
Yeah,
back
we
to
do.
that.
We do Postmates.
Yeah, there you go.
Sometimes.
So, all right, Ken. So, and you've stayed healthy this whole time.
So far, although I think I might have gotten it right at the beginning, like just as we were starting the lockdown.
And what did that look like?
So it was like March 2020. So I had
Right.
like a fever that went up and down and up and down. And my doctor didn't know what it was. And I went to urgent care and, they tested me for influenza and it wasn't that. There were no COVID tests.
Right.
Eventually it went away. So I might have had it very early on. And if so, I consider myself very lucky. I didn't have the thing where I lost my taste or sense of smell. But other than that,
Did your
I've
wife
just tried
get
to be vigilant.
Did your wife get it when you were sick?
No, she did
Wow.
not. So maybe I didn't have it.
All right. Well,
Maybe I had beriberi. It could be that, or hemorrhagic fever, perhaps. Maybe scurvy.
Scurvy. Does anybody ever get does scurvy still exist?
It's a pirate disease, and I guess there's pirates in Somalia. So
Okay, well,
yeah, I guess scurvy does still exist. I wouldn't have to call Instacart to avoid scurvy.
all right. So have you had all the other vaccines? Have you had the pneumonia vaccine, the shingles vaccine? Have you done all of that?
Yeah, I've done all of that.
Oh God, I still
I've
have
done
to
all
do
of that.
Yeah,
Polio vaccine, and yeah, I've done all
No,
of
the
that.
polio thing we got when we were kids. You didn't get that again, did you?
No, but I got it.
Yeah.
I just say, if there's a vaccine, I'm going for it.
So when
Smallpox, hoof and mouth disease, Moderna hoof and mouth disease vaccine. I got it. Not the Johnson & Johnson. You could still get hoof and mouth disease after 2 months with the Johnson & Johnson, but Pfizer and Moderna are pretty good.
Were you like first in line? I was one of the first to get the vaccine. Did you go to like Dodger State? Where'd you get your vaccine?
I got mine at Magic Mountain. That was the only place I could go, was Magic Mountain, which is about 40 miles from my house. And I had like a 10:30 appointment, and people said, "Oh my God, you had to drive out to Magic Mountain." And I said, "What else have I got to do?" I'm sitting in my house every day. So yeah, so I drove out to Magic Mountain, and we did it all in the car.
Right.
And then they like made you wait for 15 minutes before you could go home. And I said, could I ride the Colossus during the 15 minutes so I could get a preview of what the side effects are going to be like?
Did you have side effects?
Not, mild fever and headache. Very, very livable. Very livable. I will get the next booster the minute I can. I'm certainly not holding off because of the side effects.
I'm getting comments that you're one of us. You are what is it called when you're granted in, when you're.
We're all part of the tribe.
Yes.
So you don't have a lot of anti-vaxxers?
I got into a fight with someone who is not an anti-vaxxer, but who was supporting anti-vaxxers in that said, we are more dangerous to them than they are to us. And I got crazy. I was like, that's the kind of thinking and speaking that stops people from getting vaccinated. This is crazy talk. Anyway, no, anti-vaxxers do not watch my show. There's no love here.
They don't read my blog too much either.
There's no love here for them. And I was reading your blog today, ByKenLevine. We'll give another plug. So there's the
Shameless.
podcast,
Yeah,
which is Hollywood and Levine. And I was listening today. I was also listening curiously because you had one of the writers from Dexter New Blood, from the original Dexter and from Dexter New Blood.
Clyde Phillips.
I just finished the I'm not going to give any spoilers, but I'm still reeling from the finale of Dexter New Blood. But in any case, so Ken, so how do you do I assume that you're doing yours remote. Did you used to have your guest in the studio with you?
Yeah, I did. And I would get people like Al Michaels, Nancy Travis and Perry Gilpin, people like that to actually come to the house. But now, obviously, I don't. And you know what? Being able to do it on Zoom certainly opens it up because I can have guests from anywhere in the world. And I think after a couple of years, at first I was worried about the fidelity issues, but I think people now are so used to hearing interviews done on Zoom that it really doesn't bother people as much. So it's really kind of opened things up in my podcast. I'm still waiting for Nicole Kidman. She's in my bubble, but she won't do my podcast. I don't know what.
But then she has to, get her face to move enough so she can. But she has great clothes.
How do you play Lucy when you can't move your face?
Okay, let's talk about Lucy a little bit. I was listening to to some of your Lucy podcast. I had a lot of trouble with being the Ricardos. Tell us your feelings about being the Ricardos.
Well, my big problem with it really was the way they portrayed comedy writers. And I know Aaron Sorkin, and I'm a huge fan of his work. And I love Social Network. I re-binged West Wing, Moneyball. I mean, I'm an Aaron Sorkin fan. Yes. But he did this in Studio 60, and he did this again in Being the Ricardos, where the comedy writers are just idiots. They're just punching bags. Everyone is smarter than the comedy writers. And there's some passive aggressive shit that he's trying to work out. Please work it out with your therapist. It's like, for whatever reason, Aaron Sorkin, it just drives him crazy, I guess, that he can't write comedy. And I don't understand it, because it's like, what he writes wins Oscars. What I write gets 2-cent residuals. So I don't quite see why he's envious of me and what I do. But in the movie, the comedy writers, who, by the way, actually worked for Lucy for like 50 years because they loved her. Wow. They're portrayed as just footstools, and only Lucy could come up with a lot of the solutions. And basically they portrayed.
Is that not true? Was Lucy not?
Lucy was very smart, and Lucy was a comic genius.
Right.
But it didn't take Lucy to figure out that when you have people sitting around a table, you don't seat them with their backs to the camera. Doesn't take a comic genius to figure. The craft services guy could come up to the director and go, you can't see their faces. Okay. But the show was portrayed as like this joyless,
It was
really horrible situation. And my feeling is, even on bad sitcoms, everybody, especially the writers, there's a lot of laughter. And there is a lot of joy when a show is going well, and no show in history went as well as I Love Lucy.
right.
You're making a comedy, you're not doing Ibsen. You're not doing O'Neill. So there's a lot of comedy, and people are generally in a good mood. And the way that I Love Lucy was portrayed on this show, you'd think to yourself, you know what? Better to keep my job in the salt mine than to go out there. So that's the thing that really bothered me the most about that.
How did you feel about your girlfriend Nicole as Lucy? Because I have opinions. How did you feel?
I think she was miscast.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Better when she was
she's
Lucy.
A great actress.
Yeah.
She's a fantastic actress. I've said that so many times, and yet she still doesn't come over. But, comedy is not her gift.
Yeah.
And I think they needed somebody who had a sense of comedy. They couldn't really recreate any of the Lucy comic moments because she can't do them. I mean, you don't want to cast me in the Tom Brady story and show me throwing a football.
Although I thought she was more successful in the black and white sequences when she was being Lucy than she was when she was being Lucille Ball. And when I thought, like, she didn't have that voice, she didn't have the laugh, she didn't have the humor. Yeah, she didn't have any of that.
Yeah, she was just not right. And again, she's a great actress. She's a great actress. Yes. I would go to see her in the Bette Davis story, maybe. The Barbara Stanwyck story, but not Lucille Ball.
Yeah, all right.
Greer Garson. I'd like to see her in the Greer Garson story.
Okay, so I saw her last night in a movie called Before I Go to Sleep. It's on Amazon or something. Anyway, a thriller from the early 80s. No, from the 2000s. That was really good. She was really great in it. So yeah. I'm giving her a plug for one of her good things that maybe some people haven't seen.
She didn't have to stomp grapes.
So she didn't. So Ken, have you seen what you're talking about? Reminds me of how I feel about the Sex and the City reboot. Have you watched any of that?
No, I haven't watched a minute.
Okay, don't. Because again, another comedy that is absolutely humorless. Nobody smiles. There's no humor. It is torture. It is
Sex
torture.
and the City to me didn't feel like real women talking. It felt like gay men assuming the way real women talk.
Yeah.
I miss Willie Garson too. I worked with him on something, and he was a dear, sweet man. And
absolutely.
It would make me sad to watch that show and think of Willie not being on it.
They actually, he did, like, I don't know, a few episodes before he passed, and he was so sick anyway, it was very sad to watch. So Ken, before we go back and we go through your career and how you got to do what you do, what have you binged, or what are you binging? What have you watched in the pandemic that you can recommend that you've loved? I know that's putting you on the spot.
Okay. A Danish show on Netflix called Borgen. Borgen, about the first woman prime minister in Denmark. It's 3 seasons. It was fantastic. Loved Borgen. Loved Lupin.
Yes, me too.
Lupin was great. Like I said, we watched West Wing, which was great. And I'm going back and watching old Golden Girls and shows like that. And I would like to. I got on a Barbara Stanwyck kick.
Wow.
And Turner Classic Movies did a whole Barbara Stanwyck festival a few months or years ago. I don't know. They all blend together. And I, recorded like 6 or 7 Barbara Stanwyck movies that I'd never seen or heard of.
Wow.
And watched some of those. And those were really fun. It's always fun to discover a movie. Yeah, there was one movie, and this was like before the Hays Code, probably caused the Hays Code, but it's called Babyface or something. I don't know. You can look it up. But here's the premise. She starts out and she's very poor, and she goes to work in this company, and she literally fucks her way to the top.
Wonderful.
She just fucks her way up from one level to the next. And I mean, it's not even, very, clandestine. It's like, this is what it is. This is what it is. It's Barbara Stanwyck fucking this guy, then his manager, then his boss. And I'm going, wow, I never saw that on, Tom Hatton's Sunday family film series. That was like pretty wild and shocking. So yeah, that's been fun.
Is Barbara Stanwyck Sorry Wrong Number? Is that Barbara Stanwyck?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, what a great movie that
was. I saw that one. That one. That had a very interesting ending. I don't know if I want to do a spoiler alert for people.
Yeah, don't do a spoiler, because
it had an interesting an ending that you wouldn't see today.
So Tony Vincent's asking, so did she get to the top? As she was fucking her way to the top, did she get to the top?
Pretty much, yes.
That pretty much worked. Okay.
Pretty much, yes.
Okay.
It was a primer for women in the 30s.
So is there anything of the new movies? Are you streaming anything new? Is there anything new that's catching your interest?
I like Tick, Tick, Boom. I really did.
Mm-hmm.
I also liked King Richard more than I thought I would.
Loved King Richard. It shocked me that I loved King Richard, but I did.
I mean, I know it's, Will Smith's annual Oscar grab, but this time I think he might actually have a shot.
I thought he was great.
Yeah. I was a little disappointed in Licorice Pizza. I mean, I'm a kid that grew up in the Valley. And so I was like so primed to love this movie. And parts of it are really good. And Bradley Cooper as John Peters is worth the price of admission. But I was a little let down.
It didn't speak to me. I was totally bored. It went on and on and on, and there was basically no story.
20 minutes out of that movie if you just eliminated the scenes of people running. There's 20 minutes of the two young people, the leads, that are just running. They're just running from the teenage fair, from the Hollywood Palladium to Bob's Big Boy in Van Nuys. They just run and you watch them.
Yeah. That didn't do it for me. Did you? I liked The Tender Bar. Have you seen that?
I have not seen that yet.
I liked it very much.
I've not seen that yet.
More than I thought I was going to.
It's sitting on our coffee table.
Have you watched Belfast, which I'm looking forward to? I haven't yet.
No, I haven't seen Belfast yet.
Okay. All right. So
don't spoil the laughs. Okay.
Speaking of laughs, just went back and watched Sophie's Choice. Oh my God. Still an incredible film. And I went back and watched Sidney Poitier movies last week. And
oh yeah, those are great.
And they hold
Lilies of the Field and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner.
To Sir with Love.
To Sir with Love. That was certainly Lulu's best movie too.
Did Lulu make another movie?
I think Lulu brought something out in him. He was never better. And I think, how actors, will basically up their game when they're working with better actors. And I think for Sidney Poitier to actually be doing one-on-one scenes with Lulu, I think it elevated his performance.
Well, here's a spoiler with To Sir with Love. Lulu never changes her shirt in the entire movie. She's in a purple little mock turtleneck and white pearls for the entire movie, which was very interesting.
Spoiler alert, she also sings
She
in the
does.
movie.
She
She
does.
can do it all.
She does it quite
She
well.
can do it all. When is she going to be on your show? She should be in my bubble.
I reached out to Olivia Hussey the other day.
Wow.
Wow. And she answered
From
me.
Romeo and Juliet.
Yes. And she answered me. She's going to do my show in the fall.
Fantastic.
I know. Yeah.
This is probably the first call she's had since
No,
1983.
Be nice. Be nice. No, she's wonderful. I love Olivia Hussey. I
had a big crush on her in that movie.
She was, wow. They were beautiful. They were the two most beautiful people in the world then. Lynn.
Oh, there was a guy in it?
There was Romeo. Yes, there was. But I had as big a crush on her as I did on him. They were so beautiful. So, all right, Ken. So let's go back and talk about how the hell you got to be this funny boy. So, okay. So where'd you grow up, Ken?
I grew up in the San Fernando Valley.
That's really true, huh?
That's really true. In Woodland Hills.
Wow.
And,
You've traveled far.
Yeah, really. I went to my high school reunion and I was shocked that I would say 50 to 70% of the people who I graduated with live within 5 miles of the high school still.
Wow.
That they settled in the valley.
Okay.
I ventured over the hill, but I went to UCLA. I went to Taft High in Woodland Hills.
Okay, wait, before you go there, were you the class clown? Were you the funny kid?
No. I would say funny things, and people in my annual would say that I was really funny.
Right.
They wouldn't go out with me. I wasn't that funny apparently. But no, I was not that guy who was just seeking attention. I had a history class where instead of exams every Monday, she would assign us essay questions based on the material that she was going to talk about in class and the chapters that we had to read that week. And I was getting B's, B minuses. And there was like one week, it was Thursday night, and I realized, oh my God, I haven't done this. So I sat down at 11:30 to write out these essay questions. I hadn't read the book. And I just decided if I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail spectacularly. And I just put in a bunch of jokes and stuff. And I turned it in and I got an A.
Wow.
And so I figure, okay, well, next week I'll do the same thing. And I got an A+.
Wow.
And I figured, you know what? There's gold in them thar hills. So between that and watching the Dick Van Dyke Show and being in love with Laura Petrie and seeing that, wow, you could get a girl like Laura Petrie and you don't have to throw a spiral. I could be funny. I could be funny. Maybe
I'm assuming sports was not your
good
thing.
about being a comedy writer.
Okay, we're going to talk about how you became a sports announcer, but I'm assuming you weren't playing sports with all this talk. Were you playing sports?
No, I was terrible. I was uncoordinated, terrible, depth perception problems. I'd be standing in the outfield and there would be a fly ball and it would hit me in the head. So no, I loved sports. I loved baseball. But I always, from the time I was 8, I wanted to be a baseball announcer.
Okay, so my son, I believe you had contact with my son, with Harry. Where did that passion come from, and what did you do about it? Because you became one. How did you manifest
Well,
that?
my passion stemmed from listening to Vin Scully and the Dodgers, and as a kid, thinking, oh man, if you're an announcer with a team, you get to travel to exotic cities like Pittsburgh and Cincinnati, and someone else pays for it. Oh my God, how do I get this job? But it was, I was in my mid-30s, midlife crisis, and I decided if I didn't pursue this now, I never would. So I started going to the upper deck of Dodger Stadium with a tape recorder and just started calling games night after night.
Wait a minute. You didn't start doing this until your 30s?
Yeah.
Okay, continue.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah.
like,
I was
wow.
30.
Okay.
I was 36 when I started doing this. And the very first game I did it from like the back row of general admission, away from anybody. And here's how good I was. The usher came down and said he would arrange a ride for me home because he thought I was like so drunk that I couldn't drive myself.
So now wait, you're back there with your tape recorder,
Mm-hmm.
and you just start doing the play-by-play.
Yeah.
And now, is that for practice, or is that because
Yes.
you're going to send it to someone?
Yeah, no, just for practice. At first, it was just for practice. Eventually, to get good enough that I could send out tapes to minor league cities, and that's what I did after a couple of years. And I got a job in Syracuse, which was AAA. That was the Toronto Blue Jays AAA affiliate in 1988. Was there a year and then moved to Tidewater, which was the Mets AAA affiliate.
Wow.
And did that for 2 years. And there was an opening with the Baltimore Orioles. And I sent in my tape, and miraculously, I got that job.
Okay, so
there
I love
was
this.
in 1991 with John Miller and Chuck Thompson calling Orioles baseball.
And you made this happen yourself. Okay, so I love this because you created your own reality. So you started doing this. You would listen back to what you did, obviously,
Right.
to improve, to up your. So if you listen to those very early ones as opposed to the ones you were doing two years later, had you changed a lot in that time?
Oh my God, I improved considerably. And I really improved with 3 years of the minors, doing games every day and seeing a lot of situations. I made a lot of mistakes in the minor leagues. You know, I sucked. I blew home run calls left and right, and there would be plays that would throw me. And then when I was in the majors, so I did Baltimore and Seattle and San Diego.
Yes.
Yeah. I would see the same plays and I would instantly think, okay, all right, I saw that same thing one night in Rochester. I know what this is. I know how to call it. And I would call it correctly. But if that had been the first time I had seen that play, then I would have sounded like an idiot on 42 stations on the Seattle Mariners radio network. I just sounded like an idiot on one station in Syracuse when I saw that.
So were you able, when you were doing it yourself back in the general admission seats, would you catch yourself would you know when you made an error, when it was
sometimes, sure.
And how would you do like the color? You didn't have a computer there with you to start talking.
No, what I had was the Dodgers at least let me go down to the press box for 5 minutes and get the game notes. So I had game notes, but I had, and I like really went to town with this. I had my cassette recorder. I had a little portable mixer. I had headset microphone, and I would sit in the front row of general admission, right behind home plate, above the timberline. And I also had a crowd mic that I would drape over the railing. Wow. So that it would have like a nice, full professional sound. And I had index cards where I would write down the outfielders and the defensive alignment, and I taped that to the railing, and I would sit there and call these games. And I had a couple of regulars who were these drunks who would come down and sit with me. Wow. And I would buy them all a beer every night, and they would bring binoculars and they would like watch the bullpen for me. Wow. And they would like watch to see if there was like a pinch hitter or something. But if someone was warming up in the bullpen, because the bullpens were in a different time zone, right. They were like so far away, you know, and they would like slip me a note, you know, that Bert Blyleven is warming up for the Twins. So they were very helpful for me. But yeah, I would sit in the stands and just do this night after night. And there were people who thought I was completely nuts, but that's the only way that you can really learn.
That is, and you couldn't do it from home. You had to be at
No,
the
you
game.
kind of had to be there. You know, I had to be able to see the plays on my own and not just what the TV showed me. Plus, I had the crowd and I was really part of it, as opposed to just sitting in your house with the sound down. You know, there's a drive to deep left field. Whoa, look at that catch. You're like, you sound like an idiot.
So how much, like, I remember I was a big baseball fan, and general admission seats back in the late 60s, 70s, like were $1.35
Oh
or
yeah,
something.
these were like $2.50.
Okay.
And I would always go in the general admission section because, you know, if somebody was paying big money to sit in the field boxes, and this was like their one game a year, they don't want some skeezik sitting next to them, you know, going, hey, you know, an ice cold Pepsi would taste good right about now. Whoa, there's a line drive foul. You know, they don't want that. But if you're sitting in the general admission section, it was not reserved seating. And I thought if somebody was annoyed by me, well, they could just sit somewhere else.
So you were not the one to move. If they didn't like it, then they moved.
Right. Yeah.
Because you had
and
a whole
at the
setup.
time in the mid 80s, the Dodgers weren't all that great. So it's not like they were selling out every night. And yeah, and if I'm sitting in the front row too, I'm calling out, unless you're like right around me, you don't really hear it.
And so you're already a successful comedy writer when you're doing this.
Yes.
So that gave you a little bit of credit. So that's how you got to go to downstairs and get the Dodger.
I don't know whether that or just I remember calling the Dodger PR office and saying, you know, I'm an aspiring broadcaster and I'm sitting up in general admission and I'm buying tickets. Can I at least come down for 2 minutes and get the game notes? Now, of course, all of that stuff is available online.
Wow.
You know, but back in those days, you know, you could, I would show up at the stadium and I had this like big camera bag and I had all this equipment and everything and a water bottle and stuff. And like now you can't go into a stadium with all that stuff.
Right. Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. So Ken, so to get that first gig, you sent your tapes.
I sent a tape of like an exciting half inning, which I took from the 1986 Angels Red Sox American League Championship Series. And I sent that tape around to only the cities that my wife thought would be fun to spend a bucolic summer. There's like 140 minor league teams, and I was hoping she'd like mark off 60. She marked off 20, and of those 20, I got three hits. I got Vero Beach, Florida, which was the Dodgers, wow. But that was a lower minor league team. Mm-hmm. I got like Eugene, Oregon, in the Northwest League, which was a shortened season. And then I got Syracuse, which was AAA. And so I took that. And a lot of great broadcasters have come out of the Syracuse Chiefs.
Wow.
Matt Vasgersian and Jason Benetti. I'll just list some names here. Jason Benetti, Sean McDonough, Dan Horde. The list goes on and on. Kevin Brown. A lot of great announcers came out of Syracuse, and then there was me.
And how long, Ken, did you do that before you got into Major League Baseball?
3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
And so for 3 years, you did a full season of AAA baseball.
Yep.
And were you still writing TV comedy?
Yes, I was writing.
So how did you do both of those things?
I would send in scripts, and then, the production season would usually start in August and go through to March. And the minor league season always ended on Labor Day. So I missed maybe 2-3 weeks of production. And then I was back for the whole rest of the year. And during the summer, I would write scripts on the road and send them in.
You
This
were
was on
one
Cheers. I
busy
was on
boy.
Cheers at the time.
Wow. And so did you have to do prep for the games?
Oh, yeah.
So
Oh,
you're
yeah.
doing a lot of homework. You're doing a lot of writing and homework.
Yes. Yeah. No, you had to learn about the players and, the statistics and that type of thing. Although looking back at it, I mean, look, it was the minor leagues. So you could say anything. Like, how's anyone, going to look it up? And I was doing a TV game once in Syracuse, and my partner, who was somebody who worked for the TV station and not the team, so he was doing the color for me and the play-by-play, and I would talk to him, and he would not listen to anything I said. He would just like ignore me. So I would say things like, we had a player who had like a gold medallion around his neck. And I would say, Eric Yelding, that gold medallion around his neck is a Tony Award that he won for choreography. And then my partner would go, yeah. And the next pitch is low. So you get away with some of that. Yeah, I don't think I could get away with that in the big leagues, but in the minor leagues, I was able to get away with some of that nonsense.
So now for that 3 years that you were doing AAA baseball, were you sending stuff to when did you start to try to get into Major League Baseball? How did that happen?
I sent tapes, I think after my second year, I sent tapes and there were no takers. And look, it's luck plays so much into this. There happened to be an opening in Baltimore. I happen to have a good tape. I happened to, my partner was John Miller, who has a sense of humor. And so we really clicked. So like a lot of things happened to just fall into place. And I wound up, because I never thought I would actually make it to the big leagues. I thought really just to be able to do this, just to be able to get up in the morning, and my only responsibility was to go to a baseball stadium and call a baseball game. Well, that's kind of fun. So I'll do that for a while. But I never really thought I would make it to the major leagues.
It's fantastic that you manifested this. Were you able to be funny when you were doing play-by-play?
Yes, I was. And considering I could not draw upon my experience as a former ball player, well, he's got to make that play. Yeah, I would when it was appropriate or we had a terrible game. I would utilize my sense of humor from time to time. Yeah. And some people loved it. And, there's some baseball purists that just hated it. Just tell us the score and what's happening. Oh, there's comedy. We don't want any comedy. And it's like, this is the Seattle Mariners. We're going to lose 100 games. It's 14-1 Cleveland, and we're in the third inning. Well, I'm going to analyze why his backdoor slider isn't working. Like, come on. How am I going to keep my listeners? You just got to have some fun.
Okay, so I assume that when you were doing Major League Baseball, you weren't able to be in the comedy rooms.
In the comedy room at Cheers, you mean?
You weren't still able
Well,
to.
the season ended like the beginning of October. And with the exception of one season with the Padres, my teams never made the playoffs. So that was never a problem. So yeah, so I would miss like 5 weeks of the season before jumping back in.
Wow. And so you were able to straddle both of those all the way through?
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
You are wow.
I was young.
You work hard.
Yeah, I did. That's definitely true. I did work hard. But look, I love the baseball job. I loved TV writing, and I loved being on Cheers at the time. You know, when I started with Syracuse, and I'm doing my very first game, and the thought hit me that, you know, when I would go to Dodger Stadium and do games every night, you know, if I had a cold, so I missed a couple of nights, or if somebody was having a birthday party or something, I'd go and do the birthday party. But now I've got to do 144 games, home and away. What happens if after 2 weeks, I decide, you know what, I hate this, and I have 126 more games to go? And as it turned out, I loved it, and I was depressed when the season came to an end, and I couldn't do it anymore. So that's when I knew I was really bitten by the bug.
Ken, what was your work ethic? What was your day like when you were doing both of these things simultaneously? I can't even imagine. What did your day look like when you were doing both of these things?
I would spend the morning either at my rented home or in, you know, the Toledo Red Roof Inn or wherever, you know, whatever dive we were staying at. And I would be writing scripts. And then 3 PM, I would go out to the ballpark and do all of my work and talk to managers and coaches and the other broadcasters and gather all of my information. I also would write on bus trips and flights, because we sometimes would fly commercial. There was one time I was writing a Cheers episode on the flight, and I'm sitting in the aisle, and one of our players came by and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm writing a Cheers script." And he said, "Okay, put me in." And I said, "Okay." And I wrote his name into the script.
I love it.
Yeah.
Now, but you had a writing partner, David Isaacs. How did you do that while you were doing that?
Well, we would split up the scripts. Normally, David and I would write together, head to head, but we always wanted to be able to write individually so that our partnership was one that was out of choice and not dependence. It's not like, yeah, I know I'm an hour late, but I'm the funny guy. You know, we remained partners because we both felt that the sum of our work together was better than each of us individually. So in those cases, I would have to write the scripts myself, and he would write the scripts himself, and then we would switch, and I would polish his and he would polish mine, and we put it together. Oh, we would only do that like 1 or 2 scripts a year, and the rest of the time we wrote them together. We would write an average of 6 to 8 Cheers episodes a season. We ended up writing 40 episodes of Cheers over the 11 years.
How did you guys find each other?
We met in an Army Reserve unit.
What?
There was the original Army draft in 1969 based on your birthday.
Right.
And if you were selected like 1 to 125, you were getting drafted. 126 to 250, it all depended on whether they needed you. And after 250, if you got a low number, you were pretty much safe. If you were 311, you were safe. My number was 4.
Oh my God.
My draft number was 4.
I remember sitting in a room when they called those first numbers that first year. You must have been, oh, I can't even imagine what your
Yeah.
mother. Oh
Yeah.
my God.
And David was much luckier than me. His number was 7.
Oh my Lord.
And so I got myself into an Armed Forces Radio Reserve unit.
Wow.
And I met David a few years later. We were at Army summer camp, and he was reading the George S. Kaufman biography. First of all, just to see a soldier reading a book is pretty novel. And George S. Kaufman was one of my idols. I loved Kaufman and Hart and all of their plays. So we started talking, and we both had this desire to be a writer. At the time, I graduated from UCLA, and I was a top 40 disc jockey.
Wow.
Bouncing around the country as Beaver Cleaver. And at that point, I was doing all nights in San Bernardino. So my career was really meteoric. And so we talked about, yeah, it would be fun to try writing something. Neither of us had written anything. And then summer camp was over, and I went back to San Bernardino and promptly got fired and came back to Los Angeles to live with my parents while I sent out more tapes. And I called David and I said, you remember me? I'm thinking of writing a script. You want to write it with me? And we decided to form a partnership. And we have essentially been partners ever since.
Wow.
It's like 48 years now.
That it's unbelievable. And so 4 and 7 ended up being pretty damn lucky for both of you.
You know, it really was, because I look back at it, and if I hadn't gone into the Army, I never would have met my partner, probably never would have launched a writing career. And our big break was writing MASH. And we never could have written MASH if we didn't have that authority over the world, which we gained by actually being in the military.
Wow.
So in a way, it did turn out to be a really fortuitous thing for me, but you couldn't have convinced me of that the night that they were calling the numbers.
Yeah. Okay. So before your number, so you're a kid, you want to be a sports announcer. What do you go to college for? What's your major in college?
Psychology. I wanted to do television and radio, but my father said, you know, take advantage of this academic 4-year window and study something real. So my BA is in psychology, which I have only used to write Frasier and Lilith's psychobabble.
Very well, though.
Yeah.
So that prepared you for that. That's good.
So that's what I did. That's what I did at UCLA, and I got involved in the campus radio station.
But I assume that the college, you were drafted first, right? You were 18 when weren't you 18 when you were drafted?
No, if you had a school deferment, you could postpone that. So
when did you go into?
I went in 1970.
And you were?
I was 20.
You were 20.
Although when I was 19, I got a weekend job as a sports intern at a radio station in LA called KMPC, which was a big full service radio station. And our afternoon disc jockey was Gary Owens.
Wow.
Who at the time was also on Laugh-In, which was the #1 show in America at the time. Gary had this beautiful, deep, resonant voice. And I would write comedy bits for Gary to use on his radio show, not to be paid, but just, you know, it was enough of a reward that the great Gary Owens would read my lines or do my bits. And occasionally he would even let me come on the air with him and do this. And so one day I get a call. Would I meet with George Slaughter, who is the showrunner of Laugh-In, tomorrow at 4:00? I'm like, what does he want with me? Okay. So I
Oh, shoot.
drive over to NBC Burbank and
Mhm.
I meet with him, and Gary, unsolicited, had given Slaughter the material that I had written for him.
Wow.
And George Slaughter offered me a job to be a writer
Wow.
on Laugh-In.
Wow.
I'm 19 years old. Job pays like $50,000 a year to write for the #1 show. I'm making
Wow.
$1.25 on as an intern at KMPC. I said, can I do this part-time? And he said, no, you have to be here in the office all day. And I said, I can't take the job because I would have lost my 2S deferment and I would have been drafted in like 2 months. So I had to turn down this $50,000 a year job, 19 years old, turning down a $50,000.
Writing for Laugh-In.
Writing for
Was like,
Laugh-In.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know that you have limited time. You're going off to do a gig. So I want to make sure we get some of this stuff in. So when did you first start writing comedy? When do you realize you can write comedy? Aside from the essays you were doing, is that when you realized that you could write comedy?
Kind of, yeah. And when David and I started, I had to go to a bookstore in Hollywood, and there was a remainder table that had TV scripts. I had to buy an Odd Couple TV script to even see what the format was like, because we didn't even know that. And we started by writing a pilot. We didn't know anything about outlining, but we had a good time and we enjoyed writing with each other. And then a writer friend said, the way you break in is by writing episodes of existing shows.
Right.
So we loved the Mary Tyler Moore Show. So what we did, this was Saturday nights at 9 o'clock and there was no VCRs. We would sit in front of the television and I would hold up a microphone at a little cassette recorder and we would record the Mary Tyler Moore Show. Then we would go back and write an outline of the show based on what we saw. And we did that week after week after week until eventually we started figuring out the patterns and figuring out the logic of how they plotted these shows. And we wrote a Mary Tyler Moore Show, and that's how we started. And it was rejected by the folks at the Mary Tyler Moore Show, but the Jeffersons read our Mary Tyler Moore and they were impressed and hired us. And that was our first sale, was the Jeffersons. But we would every Saturday night, we would get together and watch and study the Mary Tyler Moore Show. And I say, if I had a girlfriend, I probably would not be a writer today, because the Saturday night, it's like if I were getting laid, then I'd have no career. I'd be a pipe fitter today.
And so did you read books? Or you did it from watching the show? And how long would you say you guys were watching and studying before you actually put fingers to the keyboard?
Probably about 7-8 weeks. And then we wrote a spec Mary Tyler Moore Show and we did a big rewrite on that. And then we did a spec Rhoda, and that was rejected. Ironically, it was rejected by Charlotte Brown, who is now a dear friend and a neighbor. Charlotte lives like 3 doors down. And to this day, I'll see Charlotte and I'll go, read it over one more time. Just one more time. Look, there's some really good jokes. I know we missed on some things, but I think if you take another look at it, there's something there.
Well, the thing is, okay, so, oh my gosh. Now you can't write a spec script for the show that you want to write for. You have to write for another show, right? So,
well, you can. The problem with writing a spec script for a certain show is they know their show so well that anything that you do wrong, they're going to recognize, but other shows won't. Although today, mostly agents and producers and networks and studios want original material. They want pilots. So there's less of that issue. But it's also tough now because there's not a lot of mainstream shows that you can write for. if you're writing a spec for some show that you like, that's on Amazon Prime, chances are there's going to be a lot of producers who go, "What is this? I've never heard of this thing."
Right. Right.
So,
Okay. So first success was the Jeffersons.
right.
And how long were you guys at the Jeffersons?
We just wrote that one episode. And then we wrote 2 episodes of Joe and Sons for CBS.
I don't remember
starring
Joe
Richard
and Sons.
Costa. You don't remember that?
I don't.
You don't remember that? That's what we're known for. It's iconic. It's iconic. Florence Stanley was in it. Jerry Stiller.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. There you go.
Yeah.
And
Barry
then,
Miller was. I mean, my God.
I don't know where I've been.
I think there's a tribute to it at the Paley Center next week. Joe and Sons. I can't believe that. So from there, we did some story work for Barney Miller. And then we got our big break in getting a MASH assignment. And we did a MASH assignment, which that year we were doing freelance for MASH. And that script was like our golden ticket. And we got an assignment for the Tony Randall show at MTM. And based on our first draft of the Tony Randall show, they hired us on staff. So that was our first staff. And we were on staff of the Tony Randall show, and on the weekends we were writing MASH. And after that season of Tony Randall, we got offered MASH full time. So we went over to MASH. And again, luck has so much to do with this. The head writer, it was a very small staff back then. It was just a head writer and us. And the head writer left.
Oh, wow.
Like 2/3 of the way into the season. And David and I became the head writers. We were like 26, 27 years old.
And you wrote every script of MASH?
We didn't write every script.
Well, you were the only ones there. People were sending.
We would have freelance. We would rewrite them. We wrote a lot of scripts ourselves, but we would have freelance writers come in and do scripts.
Wow. Okay, so you've had so many great shows. We're getting to the end of our time. So Cheers, so Frasier, so The Simpsons, Wings, Everybody Loves Raymond, all those experiences. What was the most fun for you? What show was the most fun for you to write for?
Other than shows that we created, which were fun because they were our shows, and Almost Perfect with Nancy Travis, I would say of all of those shows, my personal favorite, and it's, you mentioned Sophie's Choice. This really is Sophie's Choice.
Yeah.
Okay. I would say Cheers.
Mm-hmm.
I related to that show. We wrote for that show for 11 years and I never got tired of it. Wow. I never got tired of those characters. So if I had to pick one, I would say Cheers.
And again, it is Sophie's Choice. And and then you wrote for Ted Danson later, Becker, right?
For Becker, and I directed Becker. Mm-hmm.
And you directed it. And so how was it to write for him again? Different character. Did you have a knowingness with him after 11 years? Yeah,
but we knew the new character, and we had seen him read the pilot, so we knew that he could do it, that he could be this guy, and it was a fun character to write for. It was a show created by Dave Hackle, mm-hmm. and it was a very fun character because he was a real curmudgeon and the kind of character who could say things that you wanted to say, but you couldn't. God, I'd love to see Becker today. In this woke world of ours. Bring back Becker.
And so when did you start directing, Ken, and how did that happen?
Started directing in the early 90s. Wings was my first show. I just, after years of being a showrunner and coming down to the stage and going, wait, this isn't the way it should be blocked, and then going to editing and going, okay, so where's like a nice 2-shot where we see the dress? Well, we don't have one. We don't have one, you know. So after all of that, I thought, you know, I would like to try my hand at directing. And it also seemed like it was like more fun down on the stage. It's like everyone is playing and you're putting the show together, and it seemed like fun, and, you know, dealing with cameras and camera crews and people. So that's how I started, and I've directed about, I think, 65 shows now.
Unbelievable. And then playwriting. How did that start for you?
That started around, I think, around the year 2000. You know, I got to a point where I wanted to write what I wanted to write without getting notes and without worrying about, well, they're not buying shows with characters of that age. It's like, I want to write about people I care about, ideas that I have, and I also just love the experience of being in a live theater and hearing actors doing my material and hearing it get genuine laughs from the audience. And it's really been liberating. It's really fun. I write whatever I want to write. I take as long as I want. You know, there's not a deadline that I have to have it in by Tuesday.
Right.
It's really just writing, you know, for the soul. And during the pandemic, when I had nothing else to do, I wrote several plays just because like, what else have I got to do? So now I've run out of play ideas. I'm waiting for my next play idea.
So I was one of those audience members laughing at one of your plays. It was a baseball play. It was a play about
baseball. Thank you.
And
going, gone. Thank you.
And it was wonderful, and I enjoyed it so much. So so you were prolific during the pandemic. Not a lot of people were. What has been your writing discipline, your daily discipline in this time?
Take a lot of drugs. No, you know, television teaches you.
Do you have a daily thing that you even?
No, I don't really have, you know, a thing where, you know, I have to play Jackie Wilson records for 10 minutes and, you know, clean my my bobblehead collection. No, but television teaches you discipline, and it teaches you, it's like, all right, I'm going to sit down and write now. So
do you do that every day?
Usually.
How long would you say you write every day?
3 hours, maybe. I write a lot at night, which I got used to because when the kids were little, you know, you feed them and you give them a bath and you read them stories and then you put them to bed, and suddenly it's 8:30, 9 o'clock and the house is quiet. And so I would say the bulk of my writing from 9 o'clock at night till 1 or 2 in the morning.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so what's cooking for you now? What's got your passion now?
Well, I've got a number of plays that pandemic permitting are going to be done. I've got a play in Florida, a play in outside of Chicago, and a play at Cape May Stage this summer. I'm very excited about. A number of my plays have been published, and I'm drawing cartoons for the New Yorker.
How did that start?
That started, well, I've always done cartooning. I put it away for a long time, and I happened to connect with a cartoonist from the New Yorker named Julia Suits, who is just phenomenal. And she has sort of served as my mentor. And
Wow.
I have been drawing, you know, you think, well, if you know how to draw, so you put it away for 3 or 4 decades, and then you just pick it up and, you know, it's like riding a bike. No, it's like I had to relearn how to draw. So I'm still improving. I've been been doing it pretty religiously, like for the last 6 months, and over the last few months, finally getting up the nerve to submit to the New Yorker, and I sold one that was just in the magazine a couple of weeks ago. So that's a real bucket list thing for me, because
that's so exciting. How long would you say you work on a cartoon? How long did you work on that cartoon that you sent off and sold?
Probably an hour.
Oh my God.
But you got to submit like 10 every week. So you're doing lots and lots of cartoons and coming up with lots and lots of ideas that get rejected. And everybody, all of the New Yorker cartoonists have to send their batches of 10 a week. So right. Even the cartoonists who you see almost every week, for every cartoon that got accepted, there's probably, 30 to 100 that got rejected. It's wow. It's not a field to go into if you can't stand rejection, because you get a lot of it. Like every week you submit your batch on Tuesday and then you hear back on Friday, and it's either yay or
And are
you and another week.
Are you and David working on anything right now?
At the moment, no.
Okay.
I don't. But if you have something for us, if we come, we did a pilot a few years ago for USA. They kind of recruited us to do a pilot. So, yeah. And interestingly,
Netflix or Amazon? Sorry for interrupting. Do Amazon, Netflix, does that kind of thing call to you guys at all?
They don't. The phone. It's not like I'm on airport mode.
No, I mean, is that something you guys would like to do, or does that not?
If an idea came to us that we were passionate about, and they would give us the freedom to just do our show, yes, we would be happy to do it. But to go through the process again and to get notes from 75 people and to have casting approved and have to have the wardrobe approved and stuff like that. No, I'd rather write my plays and draw my little cartoons.
It's thrilling. And does baseball still speak to you? Does that still excite you?
It does. It's not as great a game as it was. All of the strikeouts and hitting home runs and games 3 hours and 25 minutes. It's like I said, I think baseball was better before all of the analytics, and there was a Dodger playoff game. It was 1-1 going into the bottom of the 9th inning, 1-1. And it was at the 4 hour and 15 minute mark. That's insane. That's insane. Games like that should be over in 2 hours and 23 minutes. Which reminds me, I'm going to have to leave.
Yes, and I was just looking at the clock and saying, I've kept you longer than I planned to, but it was so much fun, Ken. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And we're going to look for your plays and your cartoons, Hollywood and Levine, right, and ByKenLevine. And I'll put the links in the show. Thank you so much, Ken. Have a wonderful
Thank you guys for watching and listening.
Absolutely. Take care, Ken. Bye-bye.